So, good morning, fellow bass lunatics. It's very early, it's just after 6. I'm in Waterford this morning. Just let me dismiss that alarm. I just came down to visit my dad and get a few jobs done and finalise an order for the website. But somebody asked a really good question yesterday when we were talking about finesse fishing. They asked a bit about open beach fishing, and what's the best time to fish the beach and how do you fish the beach, etc., etc. So there's no simple answer to that question. Every beach is different, right? But a good starting point is to wait for a spring low and out you go. If you bring a rod, fine. If you don't bring a rod, fine. But walk the beach, right? And look for structure, right? So what structure look like? Structure can look like just a patch of stones, Structure can look like a dip. Structure can look like anywhere where the sand riffles, right? The sand is riffling like that because there's loads of current. And if there's loads of current, there will be bass, right? The other thing is, I'm sure a lot of you know I'm from Tramore, but I'm from Waterford, near Tramore. So Tramore is one of my home beaches, right? And that has a lagoon that empties out into it. That's obviously going to be a hotspot. If there's an estuary or a river or whatever emptying out into that beach, that's going to attract bass, 100%, right? Wind direction is going to play a huge part. For instance, if the wind blows from the north here, the fish will not move up the channel. They will some, but just not in numbers. You certainly won't get the kind of fishing that you'll get in a southwesterly wind, right? How do I know that? Experience, just years of being out there chucking lures, throwing lures. The other time then is walk the beach kind of on high water and look. If there's a spot on your beach where huge amounts of weed are being deposited, a lot of fishermen will go, "Oh, geez, I'm not fishing there," right? Well, no. If the weed is being thrown up there, then so is everything else. So actually, that is the spot to fish, right? So it seems almost counterintuitive. It's like, oh, I want to stay away from the weeds so that my line stays clear. Yeah, true. But the weedy patch may actually be the patch that's holding all the bait, right? What else to look for? I mean, those are my top tips. Obviously, both ends of the beach are worth exploring. They'll always have, you'll have rocky outcrops and kelp beds and gutters, that'll fish, right? If you've got an estuary that's emptying out, then those fish, when they come out, they've got to go and sit somewhere, or they've got to head off up the coast somewhere. So you can ambush them then. So it might be a mile away from the mouth of that estuary that you find them, or whatever. Personally, I find kind of the last 2 hours of the dropping tide to be the most productive on most beaches, right? And the first hour of the push, or the first couple of hours of the push. But that's not a rule. Like, there's no rules in bass fishing. As I say, each mark has its own characteristics. The fish on that mark will have their own habits, right? And bass are creatures of habit. The same fish do the same thing day after day. Sorry, just let me throw on a bit of light there. I'm just trying to think of what else to say about it. The other thing is to just fish it, right? It's just to get out and goddamn fish it, and fish it hard, and fish it with a variety of lures, right? I have a few favorites for, if we get onshore wind, so we'll get southwesterly wind we'll get a nice surf running. It should fizz up the water. It'll get the bass active, right? The tide doesn't really matter in those conditions. And I have a few favourites. I'll fish needlefish. I'll fish paddle tails. The one I'm gone nuts on at the minute is the mad eel. I just think it's a super duper lure. I have the new hyperlastic sand eel coming in, and it looks extraordinary. I mean, this thing is like you can stretch it like out to here and bank. You know, it looks like it's going to be absolutely fantastic, and that's in 10 and 14 grams. You know, the other thing for fish and surf is you need to make sure you have the right kit. If you don't have the right kit, you're not going to manage. So that usually means a rod somewhere between 9 and 9.5 foot. You know, I sometimes fish in 8.6. It just depends on conditions, but usually about 9 foot. My favourite rod for beach fishing is the Labrax AGS 90L. It just allows me to do everything, to fish small lures, big lures. Gives me plenty of length to deal with the waves, etc. So then what's the difference between day and night time? Well, literally, it is the difference between day and night. Like at night, the bass can be at your feet. Well, they're at your feet in the daytime. It's just you spook them, right? But in nighttime, I've caught bass behind me, right, on the beach. So if it's flat calm, it wouldn't bother me in the slightest. What I would say to you is high quality fluorocarbon is incredibly important. If you're going to spend money on something, spend money on fluorocarbon. It is worth it, right? Talk to any trout fisherman who's worth his salt, and he will tell you that the thickness, the diameter of your tippet makes all the difference, right, between success and failure. And you know, I've told this story a few times, but myself and my great friend Charles were on a certain beach in Southeast Ireland, both fishing the same lure. I had 10 fish over 65 centimeters, one after the next, and he hadn't had a touch. And we were both fishing the same lure. And I said to him, what's going on here? Like, if you got 2 or 3, you'd think, oh, okay, I'm just having a good night, right? But 10, there's something happening. And I said, what poundage leader? He said, oh, I've got 20 on. I said, it was a fully moonlit night. We were fishing the full moon. I said, have you got lighter in the truck? He said, yeah. I said, go get it. Up he went. He got the 14 down, clipped on a lure. Out it went. First cast, fish on, right? So they could see it. They're not stupid, right? Bass are not stupid. So all of that stuff is important. Look for what food sources are available to them, right? Try and match the hatch. Just trying to think of anything else to say about it. Like, you could spend a day talking about it. There's so much to learn and so much to know, and I'm still learning. Like, every time I go fishing, I'm still learning. Like, I remember one day in the middle of August, there's a patch of stones on a beach I know, right? And I know it always holds a fish or two. And I covered it with a lure, and I got a bump. So I knew there's a fish there. And I covered it with a different type of lure, and no bump. I covered it with a different type of lure, no bump. And eventually I took out small, tiny little soft plastic that I had, weightless, flicked it out, and boom, fish on, 73 centimeters, middle of the day, August, no wind, bright sunshine, broke all of the rule book, right? But there she was, just sat on the stones, right? So they're attracted to that structure. You know, it gives them a bit of cover. It gives them a spot to hunt, you know. If you're on, then, there are all sorts of beaches. You've got sandy beaches, right? You've got pebbly and reefy, beaches. Obviously, if you've got reefs, you're going to be fishing those reefs as they flood. And I mean, once there's a foot of water on the reef, the bass will be over on the reef. They'll be up on the top of it. They'll be at the edge of it, So it's just a case of getting out there, fishing it, learning your ground. Don't be put off by, like I fish one beach and it's right in the middle of where everybody is. Now, I only ever fish it in the nighttime because I don't want people to see me. But I mean, I do amazingly well there. There's a reef there, and if you can hit the reef, you'll hit a fish, right? So yeah, it's not always obvious, is what I'm trying to say. But there's a Latin term, I can't remember what it is but experience is master, right? Which means, the more you do a thing, the more experience you have of it, the more you will master it, right? And that is definitely the case with beach fishing, right? And pick the lowest spring low that you can find, right? Because if you're at the lowest spring low, right, and then you think about a normal low, then that's the ground that you're fishing over on low water and on the first hour of the push, right? And use your GPS on your phone. Go dink, reef, mark, reef, reef, stones, doom. My phone is full of pins, right? Just because, now, a lot of the beaches I don't have to, I just do it from memory, right? What else? Yeah, and then the other thing is life, right? I mean, if I arrive to some spots and I see there is no life, there are no gannets, there are no terns, no cormorants, there's nothing working, I just know, shit, we're just flogging the water here, right? So yeah, look, I hope that's helpful and that it answers your question and it gives you a place to get started. I fish all sorts of lures, right? And some are way better than others. There's absolutely no doubt. Like it's just 100% the case, right? I know that the metal, the Savage Gear Seeker became like, no, it's like it's a piece of metal. Like, yeah, it's a good lure, but like there are better lures out there, right? Paddle tails work extremely well in the surf in the nighttime. Needlefish, like Charles Nelson, the sea wolf, I have done incredibly well, like so well I don't document it because the thing will get annihilated or whatever, it's always been the way with fishing, right? You're meant to keep stuff under your hat. You're not meant to advertise. The whole fun of fishing is actually going off and finding the fish yourself. Like, there's no fun in ringing some fellow up and saying, oh, where are the bass? Like, oh, they're over here. All right, I'll go over there. So, what did you achieve? Like, you didn't sit down and think about, hey, that looks like a bassy spot. Let's go there at low tide, check it out and see. Let's fish the first of the flood. Let's fish it on the high water back down. Let's see, do they show up? Is it the middle of the water? I know they're going to be here at some point. Like, for me, that's always been the exciting part of bass fishing, is looking at the ground and saying, yeah, I know this holds some fish. I'm just got to figure out when and what they want. And the other thing I fish on the beach a lot is surface lures. They love them. Yeah, in the waves. Realis pencils, pachinkos, feed poppers, and the takes on the feed popper, for instance, are out of this world. Like, if you put a popper in between the first two tables and you're poop, 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 and next thing this bass comes up and smashes it, in the wave. It's incredible, and beaches tend to have a good bit of current, so you'll get a great fight out of those fish. Keep your fluoro as low as you can go. Same with your braid. You know, I'm usually fishing 16, 18. Occasionally I'll fish 20 when I'm throwing really big lures, right? Like the 175 flyer. That for me is, at certain times of year, I won't go to the beach without a 175 flyer, because they're just so good from Duo. So yeah, that's it. I hope that answers your question. I hope it's helpful. I hope it gets you going and gets you thinking. Yeah, I can't think of anything to add, so I'm not going to wobble on and bullshit. So that's it. I have a busy day ahead. I don't know. I won't be fishing today, but I'll be working away at other stuff. So tight lines, everybody. There's still time for a whopper. Hopefully. Okay, tight lines. Bye bye.